Claude Code and skills. They are all the rage these days. I've talked about skills on this channel. I've used skills, but I've never actually built one myself. And I wasn't even entirely sure of all the mechanics that went into what made up a skill. So today I wanted to do a deep dive into what actually makes up a skill and to what their full capabilities even are. But I also want to show you skills aren't just for Claude Code. They're portable across all the coding agents. Claude Code, Codex, Gemini CLI, even Claude Cowork. They can all use the exact same skill files. And I'll talk about one little key piece of information that I don't hear mentioned all that much. Skills can do more than you think, but that's why it's really important to know what's inside the skill you're downloading before you download and use it. First, let's clear up the confusion between custom slash commands and skills in Claude Code. Anthropic has officially merged custom slash commands and skills together. A custom slash command is just a prompt that you've created and saved into a file so you can run it again and again and again without having to type it in over and over. Skills originally were run autonomously by Claude when it decided it was trying to do something that a specific skill fit into, but now you can find both skills and your custom slash commands just by typing slash. That means that in Claude Code, at least, you can now explicitly tell Claude that you're trying to run a skill by typing the slash command and then the name of the skill. So with that cleared up, what exactly is a skill physically when we're talking about file structure? I kind of assumed it might be some complex file format, but when you actually look at the file structure, it is surprisingly simple. At its heart, it's just a directory with the name of the skill. Inside of that directory, it can be as simple as a single file called skill.md. That's it. That's the only required piece for a skill. So over here in my project directory, we've got the .claude folder. Inside of the .claude folder is the skills directory. Inside of the skills directory is where you find all of your skills. Each skill has a top-level directory with the name of the skill. So the front-end design skill, this is the skill inside of the Claude Code plugin that makes your front-end design look a whole lot better. All it is a single markdown file, and it's just got a name, a description, and some context to tell Claude Code how to design a better front end. It's got clear descriptions, information, a little bit of context to help Claude know what to do and what not to do, but that's it. It's just basically an extended prompt, and that's it. So your skills could be as simple as just this YAML frontmatter at the top, this header with the name and the description, and then some context to hand off to the coding agent, or they can be a little bit more complicated. Remember when I said I wanted to find out what their full capabilities are? That's where this next one comes in. While the only files that you're required to have is this skill markdown file, you can actually have kind of as much as you want in here. You could have an examples directory. You could have a template for Claude to follow to build something. You can even have a scripts directory. And yeah, that means it can run code behind the scenes for you. Up here in this code base visualizer, the only thing it has is a skill that tells Claude how to build an interactive HTML tree view of the current project that you're in. And to do that, it tells Claude to run the script in the scripts directory. So that means that if you use this skill, or if Claude triggers this skill, it's running a Python script behind the scenes for you. Now, this doesn't necessarily have to be scary, but it does mean that there could be a script in your skill that's going to go run code on your machine. You might even work with Claude to build a skill that builds a script that will run code on your machine. It could be adding and altering and deleting files. So this isn't meant to be scary. It's just meant to be a word of caution. If you're downloading skills from the internet, kind of treat it like you would any other piece of code. If it's coming from a trusted source, you're probably good. But if it's just coming from somewhere random on the internet, just at least take a peek inside of the directory structure and see if it's running any scripts, and at a minimum, ask Claude or another coding agent, what exactly does this script do? Is there anything I should know about? Does it do what I think it's about to do? Nothing scary, just something to be aware of. So the other thing that was always a little bit confusing to me was, what if I just keep adding skills? If I have more and more skills in my project, isn't that just going to blow up my context window with Claude? it can only keep so many things in memory before everything starts falling apart. So isn't that bad to have a bunch of skills? It turns out that's not really a problem because the coding agents are using an idea called progressive loading. So what Claude Code is doing, what basically everybody is doing, is it's going to go find all the skills in your project directory or in your user directory, and it's going to read the descriptions and load those into its memory. And then when it's asked to do a task that it thinks sounds like what's in the description, it will go load the rest of the information and add it to the context for what it's trying to do. So it's kind of like having a recipe book. You might browse through the names of the recipe, but you're not going to read all the instructions and remember all the ingredients until you're actually ready to make that specific recipe for a specific meal. This description is what Claude uses to trigger a skill. But I'll be honest, skills don't get triggered as often as you might think that they should be. I don't know if it's poor description or conflicting descriptions, but for whatever reason, people are reporting that skills definitely aren't triggering when they think that they should be. So if you have a specific skill that you really want your coding agent to use, it's always a good idea to mention it in your prompt, even if you can't explicitly call it. And we'll talk about that in a second. All right, so this next part is one of the coolest features of skills, and probably why people are so excited about them. So remember, a skill is just a way of telling your AI agent, here's a very specific way I want you to do this task. Here's all the information I have to give to you to make you an expert at this one thing. So once you have that information all bundled up and you want to use it over and over, you probably also want to use it amongst various AI tools. And that's the great thing about skills, they're portable. Because skills are built on an open standard, pretty much everybody has adopted that open standard, which means that skills are interoperable among different AI tools. So once you've got your skills written and they're working pretty much the way that you want them to work, you might want to switch over to Codex or Gemini CLI or some other coding agent from time to time. But you've got all these great skills over in Claude and you don't want to lose that. Luckily, they have made it super simple. This file structure stays the same across all agents. The only thing that you need to change from coding tool to coding tool is where you place that skills directory. In Claude, it's in a .claude folder. In Codex, it's in a .codex folder. So if you want to make sure that you have all of these skills available for multiple coding agents, it's just as simple as copying directories. So Codex just needs a .codex directory. And then I'm just going to copy the skills directory from Claude into the Codex directory. And all the skills are available to Codex. Same thing for Gemini, but they use a slightly different naming convention. They use .agent. Once you paste the skills in there, then Gemini has access to the skills as well. So this is where you would put a project level skill. If you wanted to install your skills at a more global level, you would put these same directories at your user level. Then it's global, you can see it across all projects all the time. And if there's other coding tools that you want to install your skills into, just look at the documentation to see what kind of file structure they need, or just ask your coding tool. And we don't want to forget about Cowork. You can use those same skills over in Cowork. The installation is a little bit different. You do it right there inside of Cowork. You go into settings, and then capabilities, scroll all the way down to the bottom and you'll find skills. So you can just upload that skill that you created right here in Cowork. The only thing that makes this just a little bit tricky is, remember, the skills that you created are probably living in a hidden file. That's the .claude, .gemini. That dot makes it a hidden file. So you can either reset your Finder to find hidden files, or come back here into your project, create a new directory called anything you like. I'm going to call it Cowork skills so I can find it again later. And I'm going to paste those skills into that Cowork directory. So then when I come back to Cowork and I want to upload it, I can see the directory and I can select which skill I want to add to Cowork. So all I did for this skill was just add the skill.md file because it was a simple skill. If this was a more complicated skill that needed some of the other resources in that directory, I would need to zip it up first and then upload that zip file to Claude Cowork. So to find and run your skills in Claude Code, you can just type the /skills command. So in this case, knock knock is actually a custom / command that I built, but it's going to include it in the list of skills that it has available. The only difference is this will not run autonomously. Claude won't ever call this on its own because there's no description in it. But the cool thing is this means you can explicitly run any skill just by typing / and the name of the skill. Knock, knock. Who's there? Get who? Get ready to commit because this code isn't going to push itself. Okay, I didn't say it was a good skill. And of course, Claude will run the skill on its own if it's asked to do something that it thinks fits the description of the skill. So Codex does something similar. Of course, it will automatically call the skill if it comes across something that it thinks matches the descriptions of one of its skills. But you can also explicitly call the skill. So you can either type / and then the name of the skill, or you can list out the skills. And from there, you can actually scroll up and down and run it from the command line. You can also type in $, and the name of the skill, and that will also run it. This is one instance where I'll say I think Codex made it just a little bit easier to explicitly run a skill than Claude Code does. And then we've got Gemini. Gemini is a little bit different. They are still the CLI that is only calling skills automatically. There is no /skill command, and they don't list any of the skills just by typing / and hoping that you can type in the name of your skill. But remember, even though you can't explicitly call a skill directly from Gemini, you can always ask it to use a skill. So you could say something like, can you use the front-end design skill and try to make the UX just a little bit better looking? Not guaranteed to work, but it definitely can give it a little nudge if you think it's not picking up the skill that you think it should be picking up. And so that's really it. You basically create a folder, then you add a skills.md file into that folder, and then you add any other supporting documentation or scripts or examples, and you put exactly what you want the skill to do inside that main skill.md file. It's really just that simple. So obviously the next task I have for myself is to build a skill for myself and then maybe also see if I can port it over to Claude Cowork. But that's not a job for today. That I think is going to be one of my next videos. So if you're interested in that, hit that subscribe button, maybe the bell to get notified when the next video comes out, and join me over there and we'll build a new skill together. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.